The gala and the mockery. The grand chandelier hung like a jewel above the glittering ballroom, casting a warm, golden glow across the polished marble floors of the Crescent City Grand Hotel. Crystal glasses chimed in the hands of wealthy philanthropists, their laughter mingling with the soft hum of a string quartet. But amidst the glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos, a man walked quietly along the margins of the crowd, unnoticed, almost invisible. His name was Daniel Mercer, a single dad, exhausted janitor, and pianist whose fingers hadn't touched a real piano in years. His brown eyes flickered nervously as he adjusted the fraying sleeves of his coat, feeling the weight of judgment from the polished elite surrounding him. Tonight was the city's most prestigious gala, an event where billionaires flaunted power and influence. Daniel had been invited not as a guest, but by mistake, or perhaps as a courtesy from a city foundation recognizing local workers. He had told himself it didn't matter, that he could simply observe the splendor for a few hours before returning to his modest apartment and his 10-year-old daughter, Lily. And then, it happened. Jonathan Blackwell, the CEO of Blackwell Industries, a man known for his ruthless deals and public arrogance, spotted Daniel quietly dusting the corners of the ballroom. Jonathan's laughter cut through the music like a scalpel. Well, what do we have here?" he sneered, striding over with his champagne glass glinting under the lights. "A janitor at my gala? Tell me, do you mop floors with that tie on, or is it just for show?" The guests turned, eyes flicking between the CEO and the janitor. A ripple of laughter spread across the room, cruel and precise. Daniel felt a heat rise to his cheeks, a knot tightening in his stomach. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to explain that he wasn't here to impress anyone, that his world was a far cry from this sparkling nightmare. But he couldn't find his voice. Jonathan circled him like a predator, smirking. "I've seen janitors play the piano at local schools," he continued. "But I doubt anyone here expects a janitor to do more than clean up spilled drinks. You don't belong here." The humiliation was suffocating. Daniel's hands trembled slightly, and he fought to maintain composure. Yet, despite the mocking laughter, he noticed something odd: the orchestra had stopped playing mid-piece. The music had halted, leaving an eerie, fragile silence in the air, and a man in the corner, a conductor, frazzled and pale, scanned the crowd frantically. "Excuse me," the conductor called out. "Is there anyone here who is a piano virtuoso?" The entire room froze. Jonathan's smirk faltered. Guests whispered nervously. The orchestra's instruments seemed to hold their breath, waiting for an answer. Daniel's heart skipped. This wasn't just a gala anymore, it was a moment that would change everything. He swallowed, feeling the weight of the world pressing on his chest. He wanted to run, hide, retreat back into anonymity. But a deeper, instinctual voice urged him forward. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to The Kindness Chronicles for more stories that touch the soul and reveal the unexpected magic of humanity. Daniel's memories flashed in fragments: evenings after work when he would sit at a battered upright piano in his tiny apartment, teaching Lily how to read music; Sunday mornings when he would play Beethoven and Chopin, filling the air with melodies that seemed to lift the burdens of their small, lonely world; and nights when he performed at church, unnoticed except by the few who truly listened. He had given up hope of ever performing for a real audience again. Yet here, in the glimmering hall, under the scrutinizing eyes of society's richest, his fingers itched to play. He stepped forward, trembling, as the conductor's gaze locked onto him. I can play," Daniel said quietly, almost apologetically. A murmur went through the crowd. Jonathan's lips tightened into a thin line, disbelief etched into his expression. "This should be interesting," he muttered under his breath, clearly expecting embarrassment. The conductor nodded vigorously, guiding Daniel to a grand Steinway at the edge of the stage. The hall fell into an almost reverent silence. Every eye was fixed on him: the CEO who had mocked him, the wealthy guests who had laughed, and the orchestra waiting with bated breath. Daniel's hands hovered above the keys. The first note he struck was soft, hesitant, but it carried a purity that immediately commanded attention. The melody grew, rich and intricate, a cascade of emotion that spoke of struggle, love, and quiet resilience. Lily's face appeared in his mind, her small hands clutching his jacket as he promised her a better life, one filled with beauty even amidst hardship. Jonathan's smirk faltered into shock. He had expected an amateur fumbling at the keys, perhaps a few clumsy notes that would amuse the audience. Instead, Daniel unleashed a brilliance that was both shocking and profoundly moving. Each chord resonated through the hall, stirring memories and emotions in everyone present. People felt tears prick at their eyes, their laughter from earlier now an uncomfortable whisper in the back of their minds. The orchestra, sensing the genius before them, began to accompany Daniel, weaving a tapestry of sound that lifted the entire room into a shared, transcendent moment. Daniel's eyes closed, and for a fleeting second, there was no CEO, no mockery, no social hierarchy, only music, uniting every soul in the hall. As the final note hung in the air, heavy with emotion, the room erupted, not in laughter, but in stunned, thunderous applause. Some guests wept openly. Jonathan, pale and silent, stared at Daniel, as if trying to process that the man he had mocked was now a hero in their eyes. And then, just as Daniel opened his eyes, he saw the conductor lean over and whisper something urgently. Daniel's lips parted slightly in shock, his heart racing. What he heard next would change everything. Redemption and revelation. The conductor, a gray-haired man named Leonard Hayes, gestured for Daniel to follow him backstage. Jonathan lingered, his face a mixture of disbelief, anger, and something else, perhaps shame. Daniel, Leonard said quietly, away from the audience's ears, you just saved this gala. The orchestra's lead pianist had an accident, she broke her wrist. Without you, the event could have been ruined. And, there's more. Daniel frowned, puzzled. Leonard continued, handing him a sealed envelope. Open this after the gala. You deserve to know the truth. Meanwhile, the applause continued outside. Jonathan Blackwell had sunk into his chair, speechless, while Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow, still processing the whirlwind of emotions. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a janitor, not as a single father struggling to make ends meet, but as a man whose talent and heart could touch lives. After the final bow, Daniel excused himself and found a quiet corner to open Leonard's envelope. Inside was a letter, elegantly written on thick cream paper. Daniel Mercer. Your performance tonight was extraordinary. Your music reminded everyone that greatness often comes from the most unexpected places. As a token of gratitude, and because we believe in nurturing genuine talent, we are offering you a full scholarship to the Crescent City Conservatory, covering all tuition, living expenses, and a stipend for your daughter, so she may continue to thrive while you pursue your dreams. Welcome to a place where your gifts will be honored and celebrated. Daniel's hands trembled. Tears streamed down his face as he clutched the letter. He thought of Lily, sleeping peacefully in their tiny apartment, and imagined telling her that her father's dreams were finally being recognized, and that their struggles were not in vain. But the most shocking moment came next. Jonathan Blackwell approached him, his posture stiff, his usual arrogance gone. I owe you an apology, he said, his voice unsteady. I judged you too quickly. I didn't see the man, only the uniform. Tonight, you reminded me that wealth, titles, and appearances mean nothing without heart and talent. I'm sorry. Daniel looked at him, eyes glistening. He could have unleashed a torrent of anger, could have reminded Jonathan of the humiliation he had endured. But he didn't. Instead, he nodded slowly, recognizing that true victory lay not in revenge, but in the quiet dignity of his performance and the opportunity ahead. The gala ended with a new sense of reverence. Guests left with conversations hushed, whispering about the janitor-turned-hero who had reminded them of the power of humanity, talent, and kindness. The city's media quickly picked up the story, highlighting Daniel's rise from obscurity to recognition. For once,